Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of the Teaching Talks podcast, the number one and also only podcast if you want to know more about academic teaching in Groningen. My name is Simon Fokkema, I'm a junior lecturer at the Faculty of Economics and Business in Groningen, and I will be your host of today's podcast. Today we will be talking about a new technological development called ChatGPT, and that will heavily influence academic teaching. Basically, that's already sure. Luckily, I won't be discussing this topic alone. I brought the same academic teachers on the podcast as I did last time. My first guest is Eveline, my second guest is Oscar, and my third guest is Eveline. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Okay, let's directly delve into the content. ChatGPT. What are our first impressions? Oscar, did you already use ChatGPT?
Well, yeah, this will never go right.
No.
We'll keep messing up the name. ChatGPT. So I have yet to experience the full ChatGPT features by myself. Every time I've tried to use it in the past few weeks, it was at capacity, and it didn't matter if I was in the morning or during the afternoon or during the day. So I think there is some limited availability there. That being said, they have this kind of online playground. Simon, you were actually the one pointing this out to me. And I've been using this kind of playground environment, which is somewhat limited in nature, but still quite impressive.
Okay. And what did you think that was impressive? What did it strike you?
So I think that mostly it is, with only a limited set of questions, it is able to provide you with convincing texts in matter of seconds, really. So, and content-wise, they were quite strong. There could be issues, but they were quite strong.
Okay, that's good to know. Eveline, did you already use ChatGPT?
Well, someone showed me one of the options, so I think we actually used the full version. And then the question was, write an introduction to a research proposal. Well, I had some comments, but it was a fairly good introduction. So I was certainly impressed. And again, we could debate on a lot of details, but I must say that I've seen plenty of proposals that were written much worse than this one. So that was shocking.
Okay, and so just for our information, if you needed to grade the introduction, what would it approximately be?
Well, okay, I would say it's still a bit shallow, but so it would on depth not getting a very high grade, but in terms of writing style, cohesion, and how well it explains itself to the reader, well, it would score very high.
Yeah.
So content maybe 6 or 7, and then way of writing and communication would be 9. Yeah, really great.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Eveline, did you already experience ChatGPT?
Yes, last weekend I was looking for a model to classify student-practitioner interactions. I didn't know what to look for. I was looking first in scientific literature, and then I thought, well, why not look in ChatGPT? So I typed what are ways of classifying student-practitioner interactions, and then there was a list that was actually quite useful. There were no references, but for me to start my own creative process, it was very helpful because it gave me all kinds of ideas that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah.
So to start creativity, it was already helpful for me. So
and did you also ask this to Google, for example?
Yeah, yes.
So what was the difference?
With Google, I couldn't immediately find it. And with ChatGPT, it was exactly what I expected. It started listing different ways of having student-practitioner interactions, like mentorships, internships, guest lectures. Well, it was really a very solid list.
Yeah.
What I was missing then is indeed a reference to a solid, scientifically based framework.
Yeah.
But did it link with some kind of literature?
No,
did you
didn't.
just get a separate list?
Yeah, it was a really bullet point, so to say.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
a list with different options.
And how did? But your experience. So I would argue, how then do you know if this list is correct or
that
correct-ish?
is a
But
good
then,
question. From my own experience, I know this is quite an adequate list. But if I hadn't had any basic knowledge about teaching, I wouldn't have
Yeah,
if
yeah.
this was correct or not.
Yeah.
But based on what I know, I think this was a very good starting point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it basically has lots of functions, and I think it's also a lot in the news. And they say, okay, it can really answer exam questions. It can help you start up your creative process. It can even write introductions. So it has a lot of functions. I'm curious. What do you think? What are the main opportunities for ChatGPT? What could it be applied to?
In education?
Yeah, in education.
I think so. My argument would be: I think everywhere where something needs to be produced, say a manual for a course, learning objectives, a set of criteria for classification, I think it could provide at least starting points for those topics. And it is anecdotal, and it was not by myself, but I know of a colleague who tried it out a little bit with asking for a set of questions and those kind of things. Could you provide me with some multiple choice questions on a specific topic? Could you make an introduction for a manual? And that was quite successful.
Yeah.
And that's for us, right?
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that students are going wild now, right? So, assuming that everybody, including our students, is using ChatGPT, I was also really thinking about how we could use this to our advantage, right? Because I think asking students to write an introduction makes less sense, as ChatGPT can probably do a better job, right?
Yeah.
Within minutes.
Within minutes.
I think that is the main. So I mean, there were sources available always or all the time that could offer you these services of writing for you in a sense, but those will be quite costly. Editorial services, and those take time, and now it's a matter of asking questions, and then within a few seconds, really, you have quite a workable text that could at least function as a first draft, or might even be better than a first draft.
Yeah. So then the question is how to deal with it, right? Because in a way, I think now it's leaning towards that people see this as plagiarism, right? Because it's not self-produced. You had something else produce it.
Yeah.
And if you don't mention that, then actually you're committing fraud, and you could be... Yeah, so there are serious consequences.
Yeah, but I do actually doubt a little bit if it's really plagiarism, because what I think what ChatGPT does is it takes all these sources from the internet and it creates something new.
Yes.
So you could still say, okay, something is creating something new for you and you are using that, so it's still kind of plagiarism.
Yeah, but then still the thing, because I was leaning towards that opinion, right?
Yeah.
But actually I'm reconsidering, because I think it is something that you didn't produce and you hand in as if it was your own.
Yeah, so
and that's plagiarism.
Well, or it's at least a form of fraud. If it's plagiarism, I don't know. It's a new form of fraud, maybe.
Yeah, that just didn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then so I tend to agree, right? But then I could also think of ChatGPT does nothing on its own. So the output that is generated because I have asked it to provide me with some kind of specific information. That information would not be available in this form if I had not given it the executive order to produce it, in a sense.
Okay,
so,
but if I ask Simon to write my next exam and I just show it off as if it were my own, then, I would also have given Simon an assignment.
This sounds like an excellent idea, by the way.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if it, well, I think it matters, Simon, but in principle it doesn't matter if it's Simon or ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's still asking something or someone else to do your job, and I think that's not something we allow.
Okay, but let me use a metaphor, right? So we also have these calculators, and they can help you with kind of solving these equations, and you put them in, and then the calculator provides you with the calculation basically, and you can write that down as if it were your own. Is that also plagiarism or not? So
well,
that's quite similar.
You can use a calculator during the exam, right?
Yeah, so
we check for that.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, but okay, let's say you have to do homework and you use your calculator and it provides you with a calculation.
But
and you put it on paper and you put your own name. Is that plagiarism?
No, well, maybe because we've become accustomed to it, right?
Yeah.
So we probably assume you will use the calculator. But with the calculator, there's always, if you enter an equation with specific numbers, there will always be the same result. That's already different from ChatGPT.
Yeah.
So I think that also it is a different tool, like really fundamentally different. And you still have to select the right equation. And then if you select the right equation and you enter the right numbers at the right spots, you will always, and for doing that, you need a lot of insight into the structure of the equation, the purpose of the equation, the relationship between the numbers that you enter. And with ChatGPT, well, okay, you need to be able to formulate a basic assignment for the program, but you don't need to have any understanding of the structuring of the text that is the output, right? And the output it's not just one option, there's a potentially endless amount of options.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, so I've heard the metaphor before, and I think that in this case, they both could be considered tools, and then there's the overlap, but I think the possibilities for ChatGPT are so much more extensive compared to a calculator, and it is able to do so much more in a way by itself and on its own, that I think that comparing it to calculators is even quite of dangerous in a sense, because it's underestimating the possibilities and the strength of which this ChatGPT and the implication that it has. So,
But the one thing that I think is comparable, like the fact that we assume that students will use a calculator at home if they have to solve an equation, I think we can also assume that students will use ChatGPT when writing a report, essay,
and it makes sense.
even an email.
We also expect them to use Word and spell checkers, and this actually is it's also more than a spell checker, but in a way it is something else to improve your work again and make it easier. So I would be surprised if it does not
improving your work, it's creating work.
Okay.
Creating output. It's not asking GTP, hey, can you create my draft assignment?
But that could be a strategy. I mean, if we think about including it in education, then that could be a way. Instead of having the peer review, you get a ChatGPT review.
Yeah, but then they did it before, right? Your students are smart.
That is true.
Okay,
but I think there is a open question, right? I agree with you.
Yeah.
How to use it then?
But Evelien, let's say you have all kinds of theses, right? And are you already expecting students to use ChatGPT, or are you still kind of not really expecting that?
Well, I've already heard some rumors
Okay.
in the hallway. So I think we have to take into account that students are already using this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's fine, but we have to adjust to it. I heard a podcast last week also about ChatGPT, and then somebody said, we should forbid it. Yeah, I think this is not possible. Totally,
Forbid air.
impossible. So I think we should just embrace it and consider, how can we adjust our teaching to it? Should we reconsider the skills and the knowledge that we try to teach our students? I think that would be the major question. What are we teaching in universities? What makes people unique? And what can we? How can we complement technologies?
And in addition, because I really agree to that point. In addition, I also think that we cannot control, right? We cannot.
Not at all.
We can have rules. ChatGPT is not allowed in this course, but if we cannot enforce that rule, it makes us a toothless tiger, right? It makes no sense. So I really, as long as we don't have tools for enforcement, then it makes no sense to prohibit it.
No.
But even if we had the tools, then and I think that is kind of the difficulty now, is that ChatGPT is in its infancy, really. We know that Google is working on similar things. We know that Microsoft has used a lot of money to make sure that ChatGPT is part of their portfolio. I would be surprised if there will not be major changes in the coming few years. It seems like this will be the one thing that is able to set those large companies apart again, and indeed make huge changes in market share for one of these larger parties. So I think it is very likely that it will become a major part of life and maybe business life, where these kind of, and not necessarily a ChatGPT, but something like that will be kind of an assistant in decision making or producing information or producing text or so. I think the difficulty is then, because that's something we also tried together last week, Simon, you were there as well, where we provided it with some inputs to check, and then it was able to control the information that we provided, but it was not able to pinpoint out the mistakes at that point in time. So I think, and it also relates to what Evelien said about the list. So how can you be certain that the information that is provided to you is trustworthy? I think that will be the main challenge. Yeah. That being said, parties like Microsoft and Google, they want it to work and be reliable, because that will be the selling point, I think.
But sorry, you go first.
I just wanted to add that in the future, I think we can only assume that it will become better and better. So,
yeah. But that leaves still a question. So I think your point of what are we teaching in university is really valid. But it also means that if you say, okay, here's if I think about the master thesis, so the introduction can be written by ChatGPT. GPT. So never mind.
That one.
Thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
The same can be true for the literature review or the theory part, or it soon will be, right? And then even maybe the mistakes are gone. But I think for a discussion you need to combine new elements, so the parts of your data, parts of different literature that perhaps have not been combined before, into new insights. And my worry is that I'm not sure if our students or humans in general are able to attain those higher learning goals, that higher complexity of combining implications from results, different sources, parts of the literature, into a novel finding and a novel insight, if you haven't gone through the whole hassle of writing your introduction and your literature review in the first place. Can you can you really skip these steps to attain those higher learning goals? If so, I think it's great, right? Because we can focus on those higher learning goals and advance ourselves. If not, then I'm a bit worried that we get stuck somewhere.
I think so. I think definitely the writing style of students will decrease. It will get worse, I think. But I think still, also for exams in open questions, they do not have ChatGPT
yet.
So they will have to write it for themselves, right? So it won't be completely gone, but yeah, it could get worse, I guess.
Yeah, well, but this assumes that we keep doing the things that we were doing. So in a way, this could be such a disruption that also the way we test knowledge changes.
Yeah.
So and that instead of focusing on, say, the formative exams, you get kind of more experience-based testing or something, or portfolio-based, or reflections, those kind of things.
Because you have to, students will probably have to assess the quality of the output of ChatGPT, right? They have to signal to us that they understand where the bot is to be improved still, right?
Yeah.
Because it still definitely needs to be improved content-wise.
Yeah, I was also thinking about testing knowledge. For the master thesis, for example, I can imagine that we would ask for more oral presentations, but also interactive discussions.
Between students, maybe even. That could be interesting. Yeah.
With the teacher, I remember when I started here 20 years ago. Sorry. Then we did have those working groups around the master thesis to start writing a problem statement together, to discuss about what you found so far. Maybe we should go back to that.
Yeah, and then assess the process more heavily.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, given as ChatGPT is now, how do you think we should change our teaching in order to account for the ChatGPT program? What should we do? Should we really change up how we teach things, or should we keep it the same, see how it works out? And
so I think this is kind of a personal question as well. So I think from my perspective, I don't think you should change something immediately, because I agree with what Evelien mentioned. I think the consequences and the impact of ChatGPT are more extensive and will have more impact in a few years as well. So if you make changes, small changes now, you will always be running after the facts, and I think it has consequences for the program level, right? Thinking about what kind of knowledge you have.
Sure,
And
but tomorrow in the exam, students are already using this, right? That's something that we have to understand.
Yeah,
The
but
rest of the
for
semester,
assignments,
we're
sure.
already dealing with
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. In the end, like next year, we have to do something on the program level. But I think that's the very short term. So, but I think in the end, but in the midterm, we have to think about the type of knowledge, right? So it's probably much more focused towards these higher learning goals, combining different types of knowledge in very novel ways. And this novelty is probably more important, because that, I think, is something ChatGPT cannot do, right? It combines words that are frequently used together. But we ask students to combine different streams of literature in novel ways, generating very innovative hypotheses, for example, or drawing conclusions that are really novel to the field. That's probably not something that ChatGPT can do really well. So
Yet.
I think yet.
And that's the point, right? So I think that the developments of ChatGPT, I think, will outpace the changes we will be able to make. So I'm not saying that we should not make changes, but I think that we should focus on what is important for our students to learn, and then focus on that part, and assume ChatGPT as a given ingredient that will be used to improve work or maybe deliverables or so. And I think resisting, and I don't think that anyone here is in favor of those kind of things, but I think controlling and resisting is not the way forward.
No. The only exception, I still think that being able to express yourself properly in writing is very important, because it's a way of structuring your thoughts. And as soon as students are not able to do that anymore, then I am a bit concerned. So I can imagine that we need to build 5 extra exam halls and just ensure that there's no Wi-Fi connection in there, and just have them write an essay in the afternoon. Yeah, something like that, to at least have a few opportunities in the program to
But
test
I think that would also something they need themselves, right? In order to, if you want to be able to ask the right questions to these kind of automated systems, then perhaps you should also be able to clarify what you mean and structure your thinking. So then having these writing skills is also to your advantage, to be able to use the tools better.
Yeah, I think you need some basic skills to use the tools in an adequate way. It's the same with the calculator. You have to understand what you are doing when you are working on a calculator.
Yeah, but not only to enter something in the tool, because that's not why we need to go to university for. I think we can do that when we finish secondary school or something, you know. But it's also about reflection on the output.
Yes.
So how do you know that this actually makes sense? I think that students need to be able to add footnotes in the right places, write reflections on outputs, reflect on the process of generating a certain output. I think that those types of assignments might be needed.
Yeah, you have to be critical. I think we have to teach students to think more critically about what is the output.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking maybe we should teach them more interpersonal skills. This is also already some part of the program. But leadership, for example, or ethical behavior cannot be, it's not a part of ChatGPT. So I think to understand what you can do with the knowledge in an ethical way, or how you can use it to lead effective teams, that could be something that we could focus more on.
I'm all in favor of that. Though I have seen an opinion piece written by ChatGPT, in which it reflects on the ethical implications of ChatGPT.
Okay.
So,
and what did it say?
Well, there were some concerns about the similar concerns that we are sharing here. So ChatGPT is following up with us, or advancing us already.
Agreeing, maybe.
Yeah, so all in all, I think we can conclude that we do not know what will happen. And we're still in a sense-making process, and everything is evolving really quickly, and we are not sure. We would like to encourage you to please continue this conversation. What's going to happen with ChatGPT? What are the main opportunities, threats, and how will this change our teaching? And that was it for today. So this was the second episode of the Teaching Talks podcast, and we will hopefully see you again in our next episode.